Hello, Expat Dad. Today we're going to look at what's going to be happening with the US dollar. So I'm sure a lot of you have been wondering. The United States has been getting into a lot of debt, and not just the United States. The United States government, during 2020, there was an infusion of US dollars, and then this whole system is the US dollars just increasing in quantity, right? And the question has been, well, how come the US dollar has been able to do this? And there hasn't been massive inflation or complete distrust of the U.S. dollar. Well, because the United States, a lot of countries that want leverage over the United States kept buying U.S. dollar, or kept buying the U.S. debt, basically, with the intent of using it as a symbol to keep the United States policies, and it's to have some influence, some control over the United States. Now, I've always been a big supporter of, if a nation wants to prosper, its best bet is to apply for statehood. That's my opinion. Yes, there is the cost of sovereignty, but in terms of prosperity and eventual assimilation into the empire of the United States, then applying for statehood gives you more political power than anything else. You'll have, in exchange for your sovereignty, you will have a lot of power over the United States government. So anyway, what's been going on is the United States has been making moves that have shown that it is not one to give up power or allow foreign influence to affect it without it having a say-so, which we've seen. And so countries like India, China, amongst others, have dumped the U.S. dollar at a loss because they do not. It is one to hurt the United States, but also because to detach themselves from the United States, right? So then the question is, well, this is going to cause the United States to either have hyperinflation if the dollar, if the United States is unable to pay back the loans, it'll just print dollars, or it will cause a recession because of lack of ability for everybody to get loans or to create loans. So a lot of people are thinking, well, what would the United States do? So first of all, we have to understand that this is not something that the United States administration has not considered. This has been something that has been discussed for decades, this possibility. So what do I suspect will happen? Well, we have to remember the United States does have one asset that isn't really mentioned much, but is very much there, and it's military. The United States will, I suspect, resort to creating a new currency based on hard assets, and we'll just go about acquiring those hard assets, which is what it's doing. If we look at the United States seizing Bitcoin from criminals, to seizing oil from rogue, quote unquote rogue, it depends on your opinion, nations, the United States will use its military to either seize assets under whichever, I'll just say under whichever pretense, or the United States will create some sort of racket. Is that the right term? A racket where they will use their military to, in effect, dictate policies of navigation. So freedom of navigation, in my opinion, is going away. The United States will use its Navy to enforce a security clause for merchant ships that do not have a security escort. So let's say all the middle nations that don't have navies are going to find themselves in a bind. And I suspect that the United States is going to suck up the resources from these middle countries. And Canada, the Prime Minister Mark Carney has made a good point. For the middle countries, either they're at the table, they're on the menu, and he's 100% right. We're going to see the recreation of a zero-sum. Well, I don't want to say zero-sum, but we're going to see a recreation of a world in which the great powers take what they need from the not-so-great powers, particularly those without a nuclear weapon. The counter-argument is that, well, this is kind of bad, and these middle powers, how can they be doing that? And you have a fair point. what we have to remember is that the reason why, and this was forgotten because we've had a few generations grow up without this, is that the reason why a lot of these middle powers are even middle powers is because of the Pax Americana that the United States has created from the freedom of navigation. I mean, imagine you're a middle power and you want to focus on microchips, but if you were kind of left to your own devices, you wouldn't even be able to grow food, enough food to feed up your population, let alone have a navy to secure the shipping of high end microchips. I guess I'm looking at you, Taiwan. So we're going to see a degradation of these middle countries at the expense of the benefit of the greater countries, or at least for the United States for the time being. I don't know how long this is going to last, but for the time being, this is what's going to be happening. So what would be the best bet for these middle countries is to not look too shiny and to not make too much noise with regards to what the United States is doing, and in fact find a way to hedge what's going to happen by joining the United States in one way, shape, or form. So we can see one country that's done this, hedged, and one of the countries is Japan. They knew that they could not survive in a world without Pax Americana, and so they've hedged their bets. They've taken a relatively bad deal with the United States for trade, and they're going to, sure, they'll come out somewhat unscathed and perhaps even benefiting from the system. Also, a lot of the middle countries that have decided to put their manufacturing into the United States to keep themselves relevant to the United States to prevent a quote-unquote plundering. Something I would argue, I would even argue there's going to be something of a tributary system set up. Now, there are countries that are not doing this, and Cuba and Venezuela are two of the most obvious examples. But another one in which this is happening is Canada. And this is why Canada has to really watch out, because it's one thing to be an economic nuisance to the United States. I mean, let's remember their GDP is like less than 2 of the states in the U.S., I think even 3, the whole of Canada. But it's one thing to be an economic issue, but it's another to be a national security issue. We have to remember the United States risked nuclear war for what it believed to be its national security interest. And this is not this attitude towards national security. I'm going a bit off tangent, but I'll mention this, and we can discuss it in another video. This insistence on national security isn't something that came about in the 20th century. This has been around since the United States was first created. After the United States was indeed a union, national security was one of the major reasons why the United States expanded westward, to get rid of the British, to get rid of the Spanish, to get rid of the Indian tribes that posed a threat. So anyway, this is all I have to share for right now. Keeping an eye on everything. Please like, subscribe if you want to, and leave a comment. I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.